What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to the channel, or welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm gonna go over how I'm creating my starting diet as I get ready to get into this cut to finish out the year. And if you don't know who I am yet, I'm just some retired IFBB pro that's about to go get shredded again. But before I get into that, I'm gonna give you a little bit of insight on why I decided to even go into this cut at the end of the year. Seemingly the best time to start going into a cut. Well, basically last week was my anniversary with my wife. We got officially married 2 years ago. I say that because we were legally married 3 years ago, but I only count the big wedding celebration. But we were on our anniversary trip in Hawaii, and I used to live in Hawaii, and that was when I was at the very beginning of my bodybuilding journey. And something about it just took me back to that place and reminded me how much I love bodybuilding. For the last few years, since I stopped competing, my last show was in 2020, I've been kind of going through like some kind of identity crisis, I guess. I always said that I'm not just a bodybuilder, and I'm not, but it is something that I really love and enjoy. I think that I was shying away from it for the last few years because I stopped competing. I didn't want to go to shows anymore. I stopped coaching as many bodybuilders for a lot of different reasons. But I think that being in Hawaii and having it be a very specific time in my life, I only lived there for a year, it brought back all those old memories. It made me want to bring back that version of me, well, in parts anyways. So it inspired me, and I decided that, well, I coach everybody. Well, my full-time job is a fitness coach. I decided that I want to lead by example, show everyone everything that I'm doing, and I'm going to show you exactly how I get started with this diet, what I do, any adjustments that I make. Hopefully you learn something along the way and you can have a transformation of your own someday. All right, so getting into the diet, the first thing that we have to do is figure out how many calories do we need to eat. Now, there's a lot of different ways that you can come up with this amount of calories, but I like to stick to an easy, a simple equation that you can do pretty much anywhere. And you just got to remember that this is just your starting point, and you can always adjust things later on depending on how your body responds. The first step in figuring out how many calories that we need to eat for our goal is figuring out what is our maintenance calories. So I like to use a simple equation that makes it super easy, and it's just gonna be your body weight multiplied by 12, 13, or 14. So the way you're gonna do that is if you have a little bit less muscle, if you have a little bit more fat to lose, and you're a little bit more sedentary, you're gonna pick 12. Now on the other hand, if you're very active, you're a little bit leaner, you have a good amount of muscle mass, you don't have that much fat to lose, you're gonna pick 14. And if you can't decide, then you're just gonna pick 13. So I'm gonna choose 13, just stick to the middle because I'm not super active and I'm not overly sedentary. So we're gonna take this morning's weight of 203.6 pounds. I'm just gonna round it up to 205 to make this easier math. And we're gonna go 205 multiplied by 13. And that's gonna give us 2,665 calories. There's two ways that you can go from this. You can either start there at 2,665 calories and you can figure out your macro breakdown from there. And this is kind of my recommended way to go, just because you wanna start out by eating as much food as possible, and what that means is you need to start by finding your maintenance calories. If you want to start here, you could start at 2,665 calories, see how your weight responds across the course of a week, eating that same amount every day, and then you can adjust from there. I already know that this is pretty much spot on for where I'm at because I was tracking before I went to Hawaii. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 2,665 calories and I'm going to figure out how fast am I really trying to lose weight? What's the pace that I want to lose body fat? Because that really matters in the sense that, one, you want to make sure that you're progressing at a decent rate, but two, you want to make sure that it's not overly aggressive to the point where you start going crazy because it's so much of a deficit and then you end up binging. And also, you don't want to take away the adjustments that you're going to need later on to get that last 10 pounds off. So the question is, what is a reasonable deficit? And a lot of people will say 500 calories a day because 500 calories every single day of the week adds up to a 3,500 calorie deficit, and 1 pound of fat equals 3,500 calories. So that's where a lot of people start. But the true answer is the reasonable amount will depend on your body size, right? So if I'm 205 pounds and you're 140 pounds, a 500 calorie deficit is much larger to you than it is to me, because 1 pound lost to you is a much larger portion of your overall body weight than it is for me. And so you want to go by percentage of your total body weight. So 0.5% to 1% of your total body weight lost per week is a pretty good pace to be losing fat. So if we did the calculations here, 205 pounds times 0.5% would equal about 1 pound lost per week. So that's a little bit more on the conservative side. Losing 1 pound a week is not bad by any means. If you want to be conservative and you want to preserve as much muscle mass as possible, you're going to want to take that slower approach. Now, if you wanted to go on the more aggressive side, you'd do the 1%. So 205 pounds times 1% would equal about 2 pounds a week. So 2 pounds of fat loss per week is a pretty good amount. That's about on the edge of where I would want to go. Any more than that, you're going to risk losing muscle mass, and also it's going to be much harder to stick with mentally over a longer course of time. And also, caveat, if you get into an extreme diet, when you're crash dieting, you're taking away a ton of calories, you're basically starving and you're doing a ton of cardio, when you do that, your hunger hormones can actually be elevated for up to a year, which means even when your diet's over, you're going to be more hungry than you would be. So you're going to be fighting that hunger. And that's why when you crash diet, you go through these cycles of binging and crash dieting, and you're just perpetually hungry, and it's super hard for you to stick to a diet. So we want to make sure that we set ourselves up to not only get to the goal, but maintain it, which means losing fat at a relatively appropriate rate to make sure that we don't go crazy. And it's important to remember that you don't need to make the deficit purely on your diet. You'll also be able to add in cardio as a way of burning more calories and creating a larger deficit. So for the diet portion, I'm going to go on the lower end. I'm going to go with a 500 calorie deficit. That's 1 pound of fat lost per week, which means from those maintenance calories, I'm going to need to subtract 500 calories, which leaves us with 2,165 calories. Also, you can see where if you did want to do the more extreme approach, where you're in 1,000 calorie deficit a day to lose 2 pounds a week, that's not really a lot of food. That would be 1,600 calories. And for me, as a grown-ass man, that's not a lot of food. Obviously, like I said, you can do it you can create that deficit further with cardio as well, but that's not really a whole lot, Like I said, I'm going to start by using a 500 calorie deficit for my daily diet. So that's going to leave us at 2,100 calories. And now we need to set our macronutrient intake. So that's what the calories are broken down into: protein, carbs, and fats. That's how you get all of your calories, and alcohol. Just for a quick reference, protein and carbs are 4 calories per gram, and fats are 9 calories per gram. And then if you want to count alcohol, alcohol is 7 calories per gram. But we're really going to focus on protein, carbs, and fats because I'm not going to be drinking. So now we need to go into the next step, which is figuring out the macros, right? So protein is going to be the most important one to set because that is going to help us recover from our workouts and also retain as much muscle mass as possible. So the way that I'm going to set my protein goal is I'm going to multiply my lean body mass times 1 to 1.4, somewhere in that range. This is going to ensure we're having at least a gram of protein per pound of lean body mass, but ideally more. And that's going to help us retain as much muscle mass as possible and potentially grow if you're a bit of a newbie in the gym. So the question is, how do you figure out what your lean body mass is? It doesn't have to be an exact science. You don't have to know exactly how much. You don't have to go get a DEXA scan or skin calipers or anything like that. Rough estimate is going to be good enough. So when I look at my pictures from this morning, 205 pounds, looking at me, I probably have like 35 pounds to lose if I wanted to just get ridiculously peeled, which would roughly be 175 pounds of lean mass. Like I said, it doesn't have to be exact, but that's what I'm going to go with. And I think it's a pretty good guess. I'm going to multiply 175 times 1.3. I'm going to lean on the higher side, and that's going to leave me with 225 grams of protein per day. And so 225 grams of protein, multiply that by 4, because protein is 4 calories per gram. That means 900 calories of my 2,100 is going to come from protein. Now, the next thing that we're going to set is fats. Fats are important for your hormonal health, your fat soluble vitamins, all kinds of health benefits. So you need fats. They are essential to life. I would never really recommend going completely no fat. But the way that we're going to get fat is I'm going to take my body weight and multiply it by 0.25 to 0.4. I'm going to lean a bit on the higher side. So I'm going to go body weight times 0.35, which equals 70 grams of fat, roughly. 70 grams of fat times 9 equals 630 calories from fat. So 630 calories of my total daily calories are going to come from fat. Now, how do we find carbs? All right, so we've already got protein, we've already got fats. Next thing we need to do is figure out how many carbs are we gonna eat? And the way that we're gonna do that is we're just gonna add up the calories from protein, add up the calories from fat, and then we're gonna subtract that from the total daily calories that we're supposed to be having. So 2,165 minus 900 plus 630. So 900 plus 630 is 1530. So subtract all that, do the math, and that leaves me with 635 calories left over. And 635 divided by 4, because carbs are 4 calories per gram, that's gonna leave me with 160 grams of carbs. So that's gonna give me my total daily macros. So 225 grams of protein, 160 grams of carbs, and 70 grams of fat. For me personally, I'm not gonna be super crazy about the exact number of carbs and fats. I'm gonna lean on the side of protein and calories. So just tracking my protein and making sure I hit the right calorie amount, but I am gonna stay pretty close to the 160 grams and 70 grams. The next thing I'm gonna figure out is I'm gonna create a base meal plan. But the way that I come up with that and my thought process is, how many times a day do I realistically wanna eat? You know, when I was bodybuilding, I was eating 6 times a day. As a normal everyday person, that's pretty inconvenient, so I don't want to do that. I also got to make sure that I'm able to hit 225 grams of protein. That's a lot. So what I'm going to do is I am going to spread it out across 4 meals roughly, which means that roughly every meal needs to have about 56 grams of protein. Now, obviously they don't have to all be 56 grams of protein, but in order to hit the 225, I'm going to spread that protein out evenly across 4 meals. Next thing I do is just pick my protein sources. So I'm going to go with a lean source for 1 meal, a fatty protein source for another meal. I'm going to utilize 1 protein shake, and then I have my 1 meal of eggs. So that's how I came up with that diet. You got to make sure that when you're creating your diet, that it's something that you can realistically do and something that you're going to enjoy as much as possible. Dieting shouldn't be just boring and plain. There's a lot of variety that you can have. It's easier to do it when you're not bodybuilding because it's not so rigid. But the benefit of making the meal plan is that you have this base amount of food or this base meal plan that you can always fall back on. Because one thing that makes a lot of people fail is having too much freedom in the beginning. Because if you go from eating whatever you want to eating whatever you want within numbers, sometimes that can be a little bit more stressful because you're still trying to eat all these things that you used to eat and you don't have the room to fit it into your food. So I like to create a base meal plan. It takes the thinking out of it, it takes the stress out of it. And if I want to adjust something, I can adjust something and have it that day. But it gives me a plan to attack the day to where if I don't want to think about something because I'm busy, I can just eat that food that's on the meal plan and I know that I'm set with my diet. But I also know how to track macros. So I know that if I don't want rice in this meal and I want like some tortillas, I can have that. So I got my starting diet. Now we're gonna go into the activity. So I'm gonna work out 4 times a week. So I'm gonna have 4 weight training sessions. I'm probably gonna play tennis once or twice a week with my wife because she likes playing tennis. I'm gonna make sure that I walk our dogs every single day, and my daily step goal is gonna be 8,000 steps. And on top of that, every time that I work out, so 4 times a week, I'm gonna do 20 minutes of cardio post-workout, and my average heartbeat range is gonna be at about 145 beats per minute. That's gonna make sure that I'm at the same level of intensity every cardio session. We're burning roughly the same amount of calories. For somebody my size, roughly every 10 minutes at 145 beats per minute is like something like 100 calories lost. So my total calorie deficit for the days that I do that is gonna be about 700. Because we got 500 from the diet, then we're adding in another 200 calories from cardio, and that's gonna be roughly 700 calories, and that's roughly about 1.5 pounds lost per week. So a little bit more on the aggressive side. But yeah, that is pretty much how I'm gonna start off everything. I'm gonna take you through it in some other videos. I'm gonna show you a full day of eating for me, some of my workouts, take you along for the ride. But this is how I'm gonna start getting back to the way that I want to be. I like being shredded. I like having abs. I'm not like super fat or anything right now, but I would like to be leaner and a little bit more jacked. So, you know, why not? And I figure if you want to watch, you're more than welcome to come along for the ride. Hopefully you learned something. I'll try and teach you as much as I can. The reason I'm gonna make these YouTube videos and this podcast coming up, I've always personally really enjoyed long form content. When I was younger and I was first getting started in fitness and, you know, I was fat in college trying to figure out how the hell am I going to get in shape? Because I didn't know anything about nutrition. I relied heavily on YouTube. I was watching YouTube almost every hour of the day that I could. You know, outside of class, I was watching YouTube videos. That's all I watched. That's all I cared about was just figuring out how am I gonna get in shape. And I recently saw one of the guys that I used to watch on YouTube back in the day. I saw his old intro, and as soon as I heard it, it just clicked. It just brought me back to being young, hungry, all that, and I realized how much of an impact those videos had on me and my life. Not just my knowledge, but my self-belief that I could do it, because watching somebody else do it and seeing how they did it gave me the confidence that I could do it too. And I'll tell you more about that story on my podcast if you want to listen to that. That's just a little bit of background on why I'm making these YouTube videos, why I'm going to go back on a cut. You know, I just want to get back to feeling the best that I can, and also providing some kind of value and helping possibly change your life in the way that my life was changed by watching similar videos. So if you liked it, if you want to follow, you know, hit that subscribe button. You can follow me on Instagram for more tips. If you do want to work with me and you want to get started on getting shredded, getting the best shape of your life and just taking control of your life, you can click on the link below and apply. We'll get on a call. We'll see if it's a good fit for us to work together and take it from there. But until the next time, peace.